So welcome everyone to the Metrics International Forum. The forum is organized by the Meta Research Innovation Center at Stanford, or short Metrics. The center is directed by John Ioannidis and Steve Goodman, and we are a research group and fellowship program dedicated to finding ways to improve the validity and transparency of scientific research. I'm Max Siebert, a postdoc at Metrics, and I will be today's moderator. All of our international forums are recorded and can be accessed on our website. Please keep your questions until the end or write them in the chat during the presentation. Our presenter today is Lina Koppel. Lina Koppel is a postdoctoral researcher at the Division of Economics, Department of Management and Engineering at Linköping University, Sweden. She received her PhD in medical science from Linköping University in 2020, and before that, a master's in psychology from Lund University. Her research investigates everyday decision-making and its underlying processes with a focus on the role of affect. She also conducts research in meta-science, especially on topics related to replicability and reproducibility in research. Okay, so if you're ready, Lina, we can start.
Great. Okay, so thanks so much for the introduction, and thanks for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. I'm going to present some data that we have from a large-scale survey that we conducted of researchers in Sweden. And this is all joint work with several people, including Amanda Lindqvist, who is a PhD student at Linköping University, as well as Gustav Tinghög, who's a professor of economics, and Daniel Westfjell, who's a professor of psychology. And I've also included a link here at the bottom to what we've published so far from this data set and what will be the main part of my presentation today. So before I get into the details of the specific paper, I want to spend a few minutes to tell you about this data set that we have, because I think this is kind of unique, or at least unique to Sweden. So this is data that we collected from a survey that was sent out in fall 2022. And this was a survey that we designed, our team, but it was distributed by Statistics Sweden. And this is a government agency whose task is to produce official statistics in Sweden. So how it works is that we design the study or the survey, and then it's distributed by Statistics Sweden, and they have access to registry data that they connect to our survey responses, and then they send back the data to us. So it was an invitation to participate in the survey was sent both via postal mail and a digital mailbox with a link to the online survey. And to be included in this invitation to participate, individuals had to fulfill 3 criteria. So they had to be registered in the Swedish Population Registry. They had to have a PhD degree or be registered as a PhD student. And they also had to be employed at a public Swedish university or college. And for the reference, the majority of universities in Sweden are public. There are some exceptions, but the majority are public. So this sampling frame included 33,290 individuals that received this invitation to participate. And we had responses from 11,050 individuals. So this is a response rate of about 33%. And they could complete it in Swedish or English. Yeah, this was in fall 2022. So just to give you a sense of the sample, from the registry data, we had information about respondents' gender, age, academic field, and that included both like the higher level categories. So if you're in, for example, humanities or social sciences, we also had more specific subdisciplines. So if you're in the social sciences, we also know if you're in psychology or economics, for example. We also had information about their employment category. So we knew if you're a full professor, associate professor, merit-based employment, just to clarify, that includes assistant professors and postdocs. Yeah, and then we also had a category of PhD students and some others. Those are the main variables from the registry data. We also have, from the survey, we have self-reported, or we had a question about what kind of data that you typically handle in your research. So we asked about if you're, or the response options were if you're using quantitative data or qualitative data, or you don't really handle empirical data in your research. Oh, I should mention also that these, our sample is close to representative of the sampling frame. The main difference is that we have a slightly lower response rate from more junior researchers and PhD students. But otherwise, it's close to representative. So that's the sample. In the survey, we asked quite a lot of things. There was quite a long survey. So the main part of the survey asked about acceptability of various research practices or questionable research practices. And this included both types of practices that you typically think of when you typically think of questionable research practices, like not reporting all the dependent variables or not reporting all conditions for an experiment, for example. But we also had different categories or different types of practices. So we also asked about closed science practices or not engaging in open science practices, like not sharing data or not pre-registering a study. So that was the main part of the survey. I'm not going to show so much about this part today, but we also asked about scientific norms and counter norms. So what should and shouldn't scientists be doing? We also asked, and this is what I'm going to get into shortly. We asked, to what extent do you think that you follow good research practice compared to other researchers? We also asked about whose responsibility is it to minimize the use of questionable research practices. We also had a corresponding question for minimizing harm to research subjects. And then finally, we had some questions relating to what we typically, or at least in psychology, know as the replication crisis. So we asked about what are some contributing factors to issues with replicability, and how successful do you think various solutions would be at increasing the credibility of scientific findings. So that's our survey, but what I'm going to focus on today is this part. So the question that we're interested in is, do researchers perceive themselves as following good research practice more than others? And to help us think a little bit about this, we turn to this literature on what's known as bounded ethicality, or in our case, we call it bounded research ethicality. So I'm going to try to give a short overview of what this model says. If you're interested in reading more about it, I do recommend these papers that I cite on the bottom of this slide. But bounded ethicality basically is a term that can be used to explain situations where there's a gap between your intended ethical behavior and your actual ethical behavior. And the basic premise is this: we want to perceive ourselves as ethical, and to uphold this view, we engage in self-enhancement and self-protection. So self-enhancement means that we tend to view our ethical behaviors as more ethical than they actually are, and our unethical behaviors as less unethical than they actually are. And this has been shown across many different contexts. Sometimes it's known as the better than average effect, where we tend to rate ourselves as better than average on favorable traits and skills. And what this does is that it increases our positive ethical self-view, but over time, it may actually lead to less ethical behavior because we sort of ignore the ethical missteps or failures that we make. So the other process in this model is self-protection. And this is engaged when we perceive a threat to our positive ethical self-view. And what happens then is that we either engage in more ethical behavior, or we sort of reframe or justify our unethical behavior. And this reduces this negative self-view and restores it back to a positive self-view. So that's kind of like the short course. But what's important about this, I think, is that this is systematic and ordinary. These processes are ongoing constantly, and they affect the ethicality of our decision-making. So what we do in our paper is we sort of apply this model or framework to the context of researchers, because researchers are also human, right? So they probably are not immune to these sorts of processes. So what we ask in our survey for this part is two things. So first, we ask respondents to rate to what extent do you perceive yourself as following good research practice compared to other researchers in your field. And they rated this on a scale from 1 to 7, where 1 was much less than others, and 7 was much more than others. And then we also had a second question where we asked, to what extent do you perceive researchers in your field as following good research practice compared to researchers in other fields? And again, they rated this on a scale from 1 to 7. So given that people tend to self-enhance, we predicted that you would researchers on average would rate themselves as following good research practice more than others, and they would also this would also extend to your field. And just to make sure that, or just to give our respondents a sense of what we meant by good research practice, we included this short description, basically saying that good research practice refers to research practices that are in line with the core values of research. For example, to tell the truth about one's research, or to openly account for one's methods and results. So what we find is in line with what we predicted. So this figure shows the distribution of ratings for the two questions. So on the top figure, we see ratings when you compare yourself to researchers in your field. And of course, many of our respondents said that they follow good research practice as much as others, but practically nobody, less than 1%, rated themselves as following good research practice less than others. And about 44% rated themselves as following good research practice more than others. So what do we make of this? Of course, we can't all be better than average. So what our findings suggest is that on average, we find inflated beliefs about research ethicality. And this extends to when you compare researchers in your field to researchers in other fields, as we see in the bottom panel of this figure, although the effect is a little bit smaller. So we also wanted to compare this effect across fields to see if it's consistent across fields. And it is. So this figure shows the effect sizes, quantity, and the confidence intervals when we separate across the different academic fields. And we do see that the effect is consistent across all these fields. It's a little bit more pronounced in the medical and health sciences. We can maybe discuss that later, why that might be. I can also mention that we did also separate across the more specific subdisciplines as well, and the effect does hold, although there is variation in how strong it is across different fields. Okay, so what are some implications of inflated ethical self-views? If we go back to this model that I mentioned earlier of bounded ethicality, it predicts that self-enhancement, although it contributes to maintaining an ethical self-view, over time, it can lead to more unethical behavior. So we can speculate that this might be the case also in research. So if we enhance the extent to which we follow good research practice, maybe that could actually lead us to follow good research practice less, because we underestimate the ethical implications of our decisions. So for example, we speculate that researchers might downplay their own questionable research practices, but exaggerate those of other researchers. And that might be especially the case for other fields. Potentially, maybe this can help explain why it's so difficult to collaborate across fields. And this could maybe contribute to increased polarization between fields, or increased academic polarization, if you will. Also, self-enhancement might be especially likely to lead to less ethical behavior among researchers who, so to say, win the academic game. So if you believe that you're more ethical than others, then you're more likely to engage in questionable research practices. And these practices are positively reinforced for researchers who also succeed in their career. For example, you manage to publish in prestigious journals and you get tenure and so on. And finally, if we think we are more ethical than others in terms of following good research practice, we might be less likely to pay attention to information and guidelines that are aimed to counteract questionable research practices, because we don't think that this information or guidelines applies to us. It's directed to somebody else. So those are some potential implications of having an inflated ethical self-view. The question then is, how can such self-views be debiased, and how can we increase ethical behaviors? If we again turn to this model of bounded ethicality, it predicts that people continue to engage in self-enhancement as long as you don't perceive a threat to your ethical self-view. But if we sort of nudge people out of self-enhancement and into this other process of self-protection, and then also increase your moral awareness, that could lead to more ethical behaviors. So what are some ways to do that in research? One thing that always shows up is pre-registration. Basically, this pre-registering gives you less researcher degrees of freedom, or just in general, structural and cultural changes that increase and encourage transparency also should increase this moral awareness. But in general, the take-home message from this is that we're all boundedly ethical. So we need to sort of look ourselves in the mirror and not just point fingers at others, but instead to try to build a system that encourages us to be ethical rather than incentivize us to be bad. So I want to spend the last couple of minutes to just show you some of the questions that we're thinking about at the moment based on this data set. So one of them is, should research ethics and what counts as questionable research practice be discipline specific. In the results that I showed you, we found that researchers on average rated themselves as following good research practice more than others, and that was especially the case, or it was especially pronounced among researchers in the medical and health sciences. In the main part of the survey, like I mentioned, we ask about acceptability of various research practices. And here, respondents in the medical and health sciences, again, stand out a little bit in that they generally have stricter views. So this table, this is some preliminary results, and this table shows the average ratings of acceptability of the various research practices. And here we've sorted them into categories of different types of sort of questionable research practices. And across all these categories, researchers in the medical fields give slightly lower ratings. So that's something that we can discuss maybe what that means. Yeah, I think I'm going to end there and say thank you, and I look forward to discussion.